anybody that has kids knows that expenses related to your kids are only so, kind of optional.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care who the president is or what is going on in the world. My guess is you're going to continue to wake up, send your kids to, feed them breakfast, send them to school, brush their teeth, whatever, all of that stuff. Right. And I mean, just looking around at this place, it was like, there's kids everywhere. So I mentioned that to somebody and they said, well, yeah, but this isn't representative of the broader pool. And so we looked at it. So what percentage of total consumption do you think is driven by the top 10%? So anyway, what'd you guys do this weekend?
Man, since last time we've recorded, we've been busy. Had a lot going on. I don't know where to start. Did we have a holiday?
Well, that was July 4th, but it's now August. So
no, we've talked about fireworks and all that. So now we're gearing up for school. So kids start school this week. So of course, everybody's schedule's about to change. That's going to be a huge ordeal. But we had tax-free weekend. I don't know.
Oh, it's still tax-free here in Ohio. Still tax-free.
I thought it was tax-free. It was just for a weekend for a while.
Oh, no.
So
it was like 2 weeks or something. I've been taking full advantage.
Golly, yeah. I cashed out at a restaurant over the weekend, and it was a round number. I was like, how about that? It was like, $80. Yeah,
because they didn't multiply by some 7 point whatever percentage.
And I was like,
tax.
how about that? And they said, she's like, oh, there's no tax. I said, oh, that's the way it should always be.
Well, good luck with that one.
No, there's no chance of that. But that's been nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people not in Ohio, they give us like reprieve as a way to stimulate the local economy. They make it so that you don't have to pay sales tax on stuff under $500. And it's gone on for 2 weeks. Every different states have different incentives like this. So I have clients in other states, and I was kind of looking at, which states also have some of these things. So incidentally, North Carolina does not. We were in North Carolina over the past week, and they do not have any. Their last sales tax holiday in North Carolina was 2013. So
okay. Well, we get it every year. It used to be just a weekend. Now it's 2 weeks, which is nice. But it only applies for, I think, items that are $500 and less. So don't think about buying a car on the weekend. The biggest thing that changed since last time we talked is we adopted 2 cats.
You did?
Yes.
This is news to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you, it's been an experience.
You want to adopt mine?
No, thank you. After we didn't buy these 2 cats. They're actually feral cats, which we didn't realize this. We thought, cats are cats. No, apparently there's like 2 kinds of cats. They both look the same. You've got the feral version and you've got the housebroken version. And some time ago, their genetic strains split. And the feral cats are very difficult to tame. And you can tell, even as a kitten, these things are they don't want anything to do with you. You walk next to them and they're like, so we thought,
we'll not bring friendly them cats. They're not cat dogs.
No, they are not friendly cats. Now they don't hurt us. They don't go out of their way to, attack us or anything like that. They're just afraid. They're afraid of you. They're not used to humans. So they don't like to be around humans. Now they will acclimate over time. So my wife has managed to befriend him, but then my mother-in-law comes in and she'll just grab him and then it'll freak out. And then it'll be like, it'll have PTSD for a couple of days and it won't go next to anyone. But my poor wife, she's housebreaking them all by herself while taking care of 4 kids, while getting everybody ready for school. So she's like at her wit's end and we don't know. We think what we probably are going to do, we're going to get them all obviously spayed / neutered. We don't even know if they're boy or girl. And then we're probably just going to make them outdoor cats, because that's where they kind of want to be, and you would think, that's so inhumane. They need to be inside. I don't think they just don't seem to want to be inside.
Yeah.
I think they want to be out there hunting. So we got that going on. Let's see. I developed an obsession with, I never knew that I never knew like the full thing behind people that climb Mount Everest. You know, I came across one. This is what happens with social media, man. So I was going through my X feed, and then I came across a little factoid, and it said on there, well, first of all, it was a picture of Camp 3 or something, because there's all these camps going up Mount Everest, and it looked like Rumpke, you know, just nothing but refuse. And it said there was like, it was something very disgusting. They're like kilos. They measured the human fecal material in kilos.
But you have to go there.
Yeah, you got to use the bathroom. And apparently it's so cold because you're up there, like you're at the level that most like commercial jetliners are flying. Like that's how high Mount Everest is. This is the highest peak on planet Earth. And it is way, way up there. So even at the foot of the mountain, you're still way high, you know? But it's so cold that nothing grows, nothing lives there. You know, humans are the only living beings stupid enough to go up to this altitude. And, you know, apparently they bring stuff with them, and then you got to use the bathroom. You know, nature calls. It just freezes. There's no decay. There's no bacteria to break it down. So, you know, you got really the first people that climbed Mount Everest, I think it was like 1924. So it really wasn't that long ago. It was like 100 years ago was the first time someone summited Mount Everest. And, you know, ever since then, it's just been picking up steam. Back in the 90s, there was only about like 20 to 50 people any given year that would climb Mount Everest. It really wasn't a big thing. Now, today, everybody's got like massive, you know, egos. Everybody's starting a podcast, Brent.
Climbing Mount Everest.
Yeah, people are climbing Mount Everest. Now, there's like 500 people a year climbing Mount Everest. Now, I don't mean to get off on a tangent here. It obviously isn't a podcast about Mount Everest, but it's just something that's captivated me. And it's our podcast. I'm going to talk about it. So now it's turned in like ever since like 2019, you got all these people climbing Mount Everest. It's so cold up there that there's really only 1 month during the year, the month of May, that you can climb it. And the weather has to be a certain, the stars have to align. So there might be a period where there's 3 or 4 days where you can climb it.
You know, this is one thing that kind of grinds my gears a little bit. Is like I go to the mountains, go to the national park.
Yes.
And you go to the national park to get away from people. You want to be like out in nature.
Yes.
And then like the one attraction, there's like 100 people that have parked there. And you're out looking at the waterfall with like 50 other people taking pictures of this thing. You know, so you would think like Mount Everest, it's so remote, climate, you know, it sounds like it's as busy as I-75.
Well, you can go there the month of July. There'll be nobody there. You know,
can you climb it? I thought you said you could only do it 1 month of the year.
If you want to die, you can climb it.
Right. Yeah. So I imagine this, well, when the conditions are right, you go to Mount Everest and it turns out you're like shoulder to shoulder with people. Well,
exactly. That's what it's turned into. It didn't used to be that way. No. Well, but I don't want to, we don't need to dwell on this, but one thing that captivated me was the mindset that it requires to want to do that. It is a very selfish endeavor. There's nothing that's egalitarian about it. You know, you're doing it just to stroke your own ego, essentially. But it takes years of preparation to build up the tolerance to deal with that level, the thin air, you know, that high altitude. Really, it's the air quality that's so bad.
So bring it back to money. How does it relate to money, Ben?
Well, it doesn't just relate to money. It kind of relates to our time. I think that, you know, people, here's how it ties into money. So people treat Mount Everest, people treat like some goal, like I want to get massive amounts of money. You know, people have this like nebulous goal that they want to reach, you know, let's say $20 million in net worth, some pie in the sky number. You know, they don't have a purpose for it. They just know they want to get it's their Mount Everest. And that is so ridiculous, I think. I think that, you know, you're going to kill yourself getting to that goal. You know, you got to have a purpose behind it. And not only that, you have to know your limits. You know, there are over 350 people that have died trying to climb out. These are the people that we know about that have tried to climb Mount Everest. And there is 200 of them are still up there, actually probably more than that. And they're preserved. No one can bring their, no one
I
can
didn't want to bring
them
this
down.
back to the preserve.
Well, I'm just saying those people didn't know their limits. And I think that we have a culture where, we're constantly being bombarded with, the most ideal of a scenario. Like, for example, I saw LeBron James play basketball. I'm never going to play like LeBron James. Why is it people think they see something, they're like, oh, I can do that.
You'd be
that
a fantastic motivational speaker, Ben.
Well, I heard a motivational speaker speak once on this, and he said, never work on your weaknesses because you're just going to end up dying with a bunch of strong weaknesses. And I think that's kind of the message. That when I look at these Mount Everest climbers, a lot of them are doing it just to prove that they can. But a lot of them get up there and they actually can't do it. And they refuse to admit it. And then they're still up there, unfortunately. It's actually very grisly. And there's a money equivalent of that, and I would say and it's even more pernicious. And that's why we see so much gambling addiction. That's why you're seeing it's a huge surge in popularity of these betting applications. What is that called? Like FanDuel and
we were just talking before this about Polymarket.
Polymarket, yeah, it's another big one. And it's all it is just people. They just know they want to get to the top of their financial Mount Everest, and they're just gonna Hail Mary it. They're actually not going through the work that's required to get there, which is a crap ton of work.
Yeah,
it is a lot of work, a lot of planning. They're just trying to Hail Mary it and see if they can get to the top.
Well, and I don't know any of these people that start to summit Mount Everest. I imagine there are very few of these people that try to climb Mount Everest that have not gone through a level of training.
No, there's actually quite a few.
Well, I guess to your point, don't expect to show up to Mount Everest with no training, climb it and be successful.
Yeah.
Right. Like as I think about what we see with clients, the wealthy clients are normally not wealthy because of luck. They're wealthy because of kind of a level of preparation and consistency over a period of time. It's not like a secret sauce, I mean, let's just use Mount Everest as an example. If you get in shape and you work on your breathing and low oxygen, and I'm not a mountain climber, but if you do all of the things that you need to do to be prepared for that over a long period of time, then when the time comes, you're ready, right? And I think there's a lot of people that financially, they kind of hope and wish, and maybe when they find out that, and this is something that we see a lot, especially as people age, as they get closer to retirement to the top of the mountain, they get a lot more information as far as how do they stand up relative to, am I on track? Am I behind? Am I ahead? And it can be really dangerous if you find out midway through that you're behind, because the things that people do to try to get ahead create a lot of risk.
There's stories that, first of all, welcome to the Money Alchemist podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben Jones.
Well, and I'm Brent Gargano.
Yeah. We completely blew past the intro, but we're into a deep conversation here, and we do have things to talk about today. So we've got we really want to talk about the most hated economy ever that we can recall, and I think we can segue into that with this discussion on Mount Everest.
Let me preface. So my family and I, we take a trip every year to North Carolina mountains. It's an awesome trip. We go to this little conference center, and the whole family stays in cabins, and there's shared meals and activities. And so, and the way that it's structured is that every summer it's split up into different weeks. So you have week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the people that go tend to go during the same week. So it's really neat because you see a lot of other families that you've seen for years and years if you've been going to the same week. And you get to talk with these people. And so I'm always fascinated by the conversations that I have year to year. And by and large, the conversations this year kind of revolved around the economy.
Yeah.
People more or less looked at me and said, tell me why you think the economy isn't in shambles.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people like that. We are living through one of the most kind of resented, strong economies, at least that I can remember.
Yeah. Check out this guide. JP Morgan puts out this guide to the markets actually they update it daily, I believe. You can go to it right from their website, but then they track the consumer sentiment. And if you look at consumer sentiment, really, it's been this way since 2021. I don't realize how long this depressed consumer sentiment has been, but since 2021, we've been at pretty much record lows. Like consumers feel the same way about the economy today that they did in 2008.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
I think that's insane.
Well, you were in the middle of 2008. Does it feel like 2008 to you?
Economically, no. Like 1 out of every 10 people you knew that had a job did not have a job and was not by choice. Today, I can tell, I'm trying to think of who do I know that wants to be employed but cannot find a job. I cannot think of one person, even amongst my clients.
Well, I think, the tricky part is there is some truth to the way that people feel. The economy. So I had some of these conversations last week, and one of the things that ended up being interesting was that when you look at the numbers, the economy is becoming more divided. The haves versus the have-nots are more and more different, and we see this everywhere from the value of assets, houses, stock portfolios, but it's also happening in wages. Higher end wages are going up faster than lower end wages. So there's this I think one of the reasons is there's this really big division between kind of the haves and have-nots in society.
I have a theory. Now I'm not going to get into the data on this, but we've commonly heard that 2/3 of Americans, it's usually a stat between 50 to 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. This is a stat that has always been the same. It has been the same since I can remember. It is independent of boom or bust. There's just a large portion of the people that just cannot save. They can't think 1 year in advance. They just think in terms of, their pay cycles. Sometimes people can't even think that long term. They spend their entire paycheck on Friday when they get it. I just don't think that those people are ever going to disappear. They're always going to exist. And what's really been going on, if you look at this, this post by Charlie Bilello, is look at inflation increase over the last 10 years. So this is the standard overall consumer. This is auto insurance. I'm sorry. But this actually kind of illustrates my point. So we've got like a steady increase in overall inflation over the past years. And if you live paycheck to paycheck and your hourly rate is not keeping pace with this blue line, you're going to feel a tighter and tighter and tighter squeeze. And I think what we're seeing today is that those folks that live paycheck to paycheck are just having a increasingly difficult time maintaining purchasing power. And also look at auto insurance. I mean, and this is not
different certain things like we've talked about this on other podcasts. There's always cynicism around inflation and what the numbers say. From 2010 to 2020, the cynicism was inflation says the numbers are too low, right? The conversation was shrinkflation. Okay, there's no inflation, but like everything you buy at the grocery store is less material. Now you really have, it's painful because some of the most like there's this big divide. If you bought your house 4+ years ago and you still have a 2% mortgage, your housing cost is dramatically different from somebody who has bought a house anytime since rates have gone up.
Yes.
And so you've really got, again, kind of a tale of two consumers. And so as I was having this conversation over the past week and the place we go, I would say that a lot of the people that go there probably are more representative of the top 10%. So, and it was interesting. This is very anecdotal, but like looking around, and we go to this vacation every year. So I see it every single year, but looking around this year, there were so many kids. I have kids. And so I start to notice, just how many kids there are. There were kids running around everywhere. And, I have an economic view that is household formation is really supportive of the economy, right? Like if you're growing up and raising kids and anybody that has kids knows that expenses related to your kids are only so, kind of optional.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care who the president is or what is going on in the world. My guess is you're going to continue to wake up, send your kids to, feed them breakfast, send them to school, brush their teeth, whatever, all of that stuff. Right. And I mean, just looking around at this place, it's like there's kids everywhere. So I mentioned that to somebody and they said, well, yeah, but this isn't representative of the broader pool. And so we looked at it. So what percentage of total consumption do you think is driven by the top 10%?
I'd say probably between 30 to 45%, something like that.
So it used to be like 35% or so. So the top the top 10% drove about a third of the spending. Now it's like half. Okay. So we are seeing, it is it's tough because the people that are at the lower end of the spectrum, it's like they matter less and less as the people who are at the top end drive more of the spending. And that's a really kind of a brutal
situation. And that's why the stock market keeps going up.
Right.
And this also creates more anger because there is this, people are watching this train leave the station and they know that they've been left behind, because if you're not saving, if you're not putting, by the way, if this is you and you're still not saving and you're watching that train go, you just need to hop on. You need to figure out how do I spend less money, and that's,
or increase your income,
because this is not going to get fixed by complaining. This is just the way it is. For most of mankind's history, we've had multi-class societies. You were talking about the story of Cleopatra. They had this story. Go ahead and tell it. This goes back like to the ancient Roman days.
The point to this story in the book is actually more about how much money you should be spending and how you should think about spending. And what it's suggesting is that you should not be spending based on your income. If you make a lot of money, that is not a good excuse to spend a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
What you should be thinking about is how do you spend based on your assets. So somebody with $5 million in the bank can spend more than somebody with $1 million in the bank. Right. And it all relates to this relative concept. Somebody with $5 million, $100 is a lot less relatively. So the Cleopatra part comes in. Again, I haven't checked on the historical validity of this. I don't know if you can dissolve pearls in vinegar, but the story goes something like, I guess Cleopatra was at a dinner and somebody was challenging her wealth. And so she mentioned that she could consume more money in one meal than they had seen in their whole life. And they took her up on the challenge. So she asked for a cup of vinegar to be brought to the table. And she took off her pearl earring, which was supposedly some incredibly valuable pearl at the time, put it in the vinegar, it dissolves, and she drinks it.
Yeah.
And she wins the bet.
Yeah. Well,
and after the fact, guess what? Still perfectly wealthy, right? Like some people could throw away lifetimes worth of money and still have plenty left, right? And that's a hard concept, I think, for a lot of people. So back to the economy, right? Like there's you see kind of the volume of society, and I'm not saying that it's good that spending is concentrated and things like that. I mean, concentration, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, like concentration is a risk. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to say that there's not risk in this, but as advisors, one of the things we try to do for clients is, put all of these things in context. So when we have somebody that says, gosh, the economy feels like a mess right now, we want to take a look at the data. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the data right now, we are just still not seeing the economy falling apart.
No, it's not. In fact, there's a lot of signs that shows that it could be picking up steam. So, before I get into the data behind that, I just want to comment real quick on the fact that the story with Cleopatra, not true or not true, it's still a powerful illustration. And it makes the point pretty clear that for some people, $50,000 or what you name it is nothing. My kids watch this guy, Mr. Beast is an example, but this other guy named Unspeakable, they love watching this guy. He will just go out and buy a brand new car and just bash it to pieces with a sledgehammer.
Well, he probably makes more on the video than the car's worth.
Yeah, but that's what people see. They see this wealth just flaunted and just carelessly like thrown away, and they think, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. But then they're confronted with the reality that you can't really do that. But they still go out and do it. They go out and buy, really expensive things when they shouldn't. So they try to compete with Jay-Z. They do. It's human psychology. We are very competitive. Even if you say, oh, I'm not very competitive, I can tell you right now, you probably are wearing clothes that look like they do because you want to be acceptable to other people. You want to compete with other people. There's a reason we're not all wearing togas. They're probably more comfortable, honestly. but we're all competing. We're all competing. So to say that you're immune to this is crazy. But I think that we're having this this social influence navigate our decisions, and it's creating a lot of consternation, especially on the lower income scale. And people are naturally, I don't want to use the term lazy because that implies that they don't work at all. But people are everybody. I don't know a single person that prefers hard effort and work over leisure.
Sure.
So most people will try to have their cake and eat it too. They'll try to, and we all make money, not through leisure, but through hard work. Unless you're really lucky, there are people out there that are super lucky. And
even things that you would see as leisurely. It's so funny how the brain works. As soon as there's like money tied to it and it is work, it becomes a little less leisure.
Yeah, it comes.
Right? It becomes
they
a
say
job.
never make a hobby your income source,
right?
Because then it's no longer a hobby. It's a source of stress. I love what I do. You and I both do. It brings us a lot of meaning, but it is not easy.
Yeah, I think being a business owner is tricky, right? Because
Yeah.
You talk about what you do. I would say this podcast is a great example of this. I never knew that I needed to be a tech guru that knows how to import audio files and do all these other things, but certainly we've had to figure it out. So
yeah, it's a lot of work, but anyway, we do enjoy it. We bring purpose, or it brings purpose into our lives. But anyway, back to this. I think that there's a lot of people out there that they're frustrated with the economy because they see asset prices running away. Here, Bitcoin's a perfect example. You used to be able to get a Bitcoin for $1,000. All right, today, $115,000.
120. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, who knows by the time you listen to this?
Whenever you look, the same goes with the share of Nvidia or, the housing is a big issue. People are waiting around. We talked about this at breakfast, about, the housing prices. I constantly see on my X feed, stories of the housing collapse. The housing prices are going to come down. Everybody's waiting for the housing market to collapse like it did in 2008 so they can buy, these bargain houses. I have news for you. It's not going to collapse, at least not broadly speaking. Now, there are certain segments of the market that are overbuilt. We mentioned Austin, Texas. I think you had a client that bought out there recently, didn't you?
Well, it just seems like in Texas, they have all sorts of land.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was moving to Texas a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Houses were being built like crazy. And, it turns out everything exists in equilibrium, right?
Yeah, there are pockets of sell-offs.
The National Association of Realtors, this just today came out with a number and said housing prices around the country over the last year up 1.8%.
Yeah.
So they're not falling apart. Another thing that came out this morning, Bank of America. And so Bank of America has a lot of really good statistics that come out. If you think about and we'll maybe talk about this in the future, but like data, like in today's world, the value of data and the value of being able to interpret and translate that data, I think it's skyrocketing. And Bank of America has access to umpteen million checking accounts, okay? Debit cards, credit cards. They have their arms around all of that consumer data. So Bank of America tends to put out some pretty good stuff that gives us an idea of like how consumers are using their money. And we just got a note out this morning that said that consumers are spending 1.8% more year over year than they, versus a year ago. And just in the last 2 months, we've seen both a 0.4% and then a 0.6% increase. So any reduction of spending from the consumer that we saw back in March, April, tariff day or whatever, it's all gone. Consumers are spending money. Employment, we have unemployment is still in the low 4s. I have now been hearing for almost 2 years that unemployment's going to start rising because AI is taking everybody's jobs.
The 50-year average, if you look at the screen, the 50-year average is 6.1. So we're below the 50-year average.
The 50-year average for unemployment rates turns out to be about 6%. We're at 4.
How much do you think this sentiment is just recency bias? Because we had a very strong recovery coming out of the government shutdowns, like crazy amount. Like we're getting massive numbers, huge recovery numbers. But those were not sustainable. We're obviously not hitting those numbers anymore. Like look at the wage inflation. Wage inflation in 2022 measured at about 7%. Today it's about 3.9. Still healthy.
Actually, so I don't know where your data's from, but I'm showing wage data here. U.S. wages and salaries have been outpacing inflation since April of 2023. So almost 2.5 years now that wages have been growing at a faster pace than inflation. As of the most recent report, I show that wages over the last 12 months have grown at about 4.8% and inflation at 2.7.
Yeah.
So that means that what we call on a real basis, if you kind of look at your increase in income and adjust it for the increase in prices, incomes are up about 2% across the board and have been for now a couple of years. And so like the housing is just a great example because houses have gotten crazy expensive.
Yes.
And I do think there's a lot of like, how do people afford these things? And the truth is there's some blend of people at 2% and 3% and 6%. And over time, wages are going to catch up, right? Like the housing doesn't become more affordable because the value of the house necessarily comes down.
Yes.
It becomes more affordable because the wages relative to the cost of the house go up over a medium term period of time.
Or a blend of the two.
Yeah, or a blend of the two, right? And so things, it's so funny how I get on like a Reddit and if you go to like the investing Reddit, you go to like a house thing, you get so many opinions on how like we're getting ready for the impending housing crash. Like, why does every issue have to be fixed by a crash?
Yeah.
Like, can we not just like,
because we are fascinated by the things that terrify us. Like, why are horror movies a thing?
Like, is it possible that these things might just kind of work themselves out through a period of kind of a combination of things? Housing prices don't go up a lot for a period of years. Wages grow a little bit more, like it reminds me of like one of the things that I think is so funny is when I was in my 20s, I'm a millennial. We always got told in our 20s how broke millennials are.
Yeah.
Right. And you see a lot of data now that actually shows millennials are pretty wealthy.
Yeah. They're
right. Like, how the times have changed.
Oh my God. So there's this video right here on X. I'm not going to play it. I'll spare you guys. But there's this girl that basically is complaining about the cost of daycare, the cost of her mortgage, which she unfortunately secured a variable rate mortgage, which generally just don't do that. But that culminates to this just feeling of just worthlessness, not in terms of personal worth, but in terms of financial worth. And at the end of her complaint, she says, "Thank you, boomers."
Well, I mean, the reality is we did I mean, inflation was 9% in 2022. I mean, there was a period of time where inflation crushed wages, and it made things really strange
for about 2 years.
We're now working out of that, right? And it just doesn't happen overnight.
Yes.
So, but again, back to why. So from our side, one of the things that we look at is like what, or one of the major questions that we get asked is, what do you think about the economy? And while I don't want to come across as unaware of some of the scary, like I'm not trying to be heartless. Like I care about people that can't afford homes and things like that. But like, my job as an somebody that follows the market and is trying to study this stuff is not to, we're not making these decisions based on our ethical principles. We're trying to, decide where might the economy be going and how bad could things get if they get bad. And right now, when you look at it, while the have-nots are in a tough spot, the people that are in the haves, you look at the average house, there's like $300 and something thousand of home equity. Like go outside and count all the houses in your neighborhood and multiply by like $300,000. And you have the rough idea of like how much money is in the pockets of all of your neighbors. Right. And those people aren't going to go bankrupt until that money is gone.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of like, think about millennials. And we talk about this, right? Like millennials are now older. And if you had bought a house over the last decade, you're now likely in a spot where you're outgrowing it. You need to shift. You probably have a good low interest rate, and you're looking down at a new mortgage. Maybe you've gone shopping for a house and you go, holy crap. Like, how are we going to handle doubling, maybe tripling our mortgage? Right. And that's a real concern for a lot of people. And it will. It's going to hurt their budget, right? Like there's just no way that you can, unless you can increase your income, but like that tripling your mortgage you're going to feel that, right? The other side of that is, as you triple your mortgage rate, you're probably selling your old house. And, back to that 300,000 analogy, you're probably going to get a few $100,000. Okay. So now your budget, not as fun, but you've got $300,000 in your pocket. What are you going to do with that? Right. And my argument is that I don't think you can have a whole lot of super deep, heavy recessions when people have access to that kind of money. Right. And until they don't have access to some of that money like that, I just don't know how we're going to have some massively. You referenced 2008. 2008, people didn't have that kind of home equity. You don't give your keys. In fact,
most people had negative.
Right. That's in 2008, people went to the bank and said, hey, Mr. Banker, the loan that I owe you is worth more than the house. So this is your problem now.
Yeah.
And there was an incentive to do that. Right. Because you might have been on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars more than you had in your pocket. Right. That's not the case anymore. You would never go to the bank, say, hey, Mr. Banker, this house is worth $300,000 more than I owe you. Why don't you take it?
There's actually a name for it called strategic default.
Yeah. So that's not like we are nowhere close to that right now.
Yep.
So I don't know exactly how this stuff is going to shake out. But my belief is that through a combination of rising wages, AI efficiency, right, like government like tax policy, like we are likely to see one of the most hated continued bull markets that I've probably seen. And by the way, since 2013, which is my professional, government debt's been high. We've seen a lot of scary things. Market's gone higher over time.
Yeah. There's so many reasons to point towards a continued bull market. Now, granted, neither of us can definitively tell the future. But I would say based on historical patterns, it seems more likely that we're going to continue to have a melt up instead of a meltdown. And, I think what we're seeing here in terms of the public opinion of the economy, the fact that consumer sentiment is equivalent to what it was in the the doldrums of 2008, 2009 is just a combination of things. One is that, wealth is flaunted and we just humans are envious. We see that we're not as wealthy as Taylor Swift. So therefore, my life is miserable, so that does, I'm serious. That does weigh on people's psychology. The other thing is there is some truth in the fact that people that live paycheck to paycheck are having a very difficult time with this inflation. Like, look at this chart that looks over, we're seeing a slight pickup in defaults on all loans. So, across the board, with the exception of mortgages, just a slight uptick there. But we're not talking about defaults it's not an increase to like record high defaults. It's actually back to, averages. Right. I think there is a truthful element to this sentiment. But a lot of it is just, I think people, it's all in their heads, it's all in their heads. The fact is, we've seen in my practice, and I'm sure you can too, I don't focus on the top 1%. So, they're welcome. I'll work with them. But generally speaking, we work with like the top quartile of clients. And I'm seeing broadly, they're all doing better. But then we also have clients that work with us that are just starting out. We're talking about Gen Zs, young millennials. They're doing quite well too. You know who's doing well? People who save. People who save money, and they save consistently.
This is the thought that I would end on. I think it always sounds smart to be a pessimist, right? I think the people that come on the news or come on the, whatever you listen to and talk about how dreary things are, they sound smarter for whatever reason. But if you go look at what pays over time, it pays to be an optimist.
Yes.
It is, it is a very dangerous proposition to live your life as a pessimist as it pertains to your investments. And the old saying is that the market climbs a wall of worry. So we're definitely, there is going to be volatility. Problems will arise, as they always have. Our belief is that over time, you want to be invested and you want to have a positive view on things. So anyway, that's my opinion.
Some people, that's hard. It's very hard to be an optimist. They're like by nature, I think that you tend to be more optimistic than me. I tend to be I call myself a realist, which is what a lot of pessimists say to turn a positive spin on. I completely empathize with the pessimists among us, but I also live my life like an optimist. So I kind of have to force myself into that unnatural position of being an optimist. Like if you look at my portfolio, it is very optimistically positioned. But that's because I've plowed in a tremendous amount of time and thought and research into things that work. And it's obvious that investing works. It works quite well, and building assets works quite well. So if you tend to be pessimistic by nature, I think the best antidote to pessimism is just put in the work to study, and come up with like a fact-based rationale for why you shouldn't invest. Prove yourself correct and why you shouldn't invest. I think you'll find that it's incredibly difficult to do that. Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Thanks for chatting.
Yeah, I think we've covered the subject ad nauseum, and we'll catch you all next time. Opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Advisory services offered through National Wealth Management Group, LLC.